Hello, and welcome to my video where I talk about things that I find fascinating, and I hope you do too. So in today's video, what I'm going to be talking about mainly is the human proclivity towards extremes, which I find very interesting, right? Because we all know that we need to be a reasonable person who hears other people's thoughts, who is considerate, kind, all of these different things that we know that we need to do. But for some reason, most of us always go towards finding what we want to believe in and sticking there and furthering that development instead of finding other ideas to continue to structure how we live our lives. And the framework that I'm going to be using for reference as we talk about this is going to be order and chaos, right? And we have to be very careful. So first we have to define, obviously, what is chaos, right? When I mean chaos, people will say chaos is a bad thing. It's like, whoa, hold on. I don't think so. I really don't think so. Because you need that level of chaos necessary, that more random aspect of further inquiry into the world around you, right? But in order to do that, what do we need? We need a bit of structure, a little bit of a process that we can rely upon, which would be what? Order, right? So I'm going to use this kind of synonymously with each other. I'm going to use structure as order, and I'm going to use flexibility as chaos. And obviously I'm going to use chaos and order as well as I'm talking about this. But what I find very fascinating is that if we were to take this framework, what always ends up happening on a societal level and on an individual level is that we end up going towards one side or the other fully intently. And what I'm going to argue is that's not good. And we do that on multi-level resolution ideals. So you do that on basic decisions, right? To where depending on how you feel, you're going to be very either like sporadic, like I don't really know what I want to do today. I'm going to go boom, 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 just do all these things, kind of go with the flow a little more, be okay with anything and everything. And that can make for a pretty fun day usually, right? You don't really know what comes next, all of these, lots of neurons firing and things are happening and it's exciting, right? When we're kind of just sporadic and go everywhere, but what can that cause, right? That's kind of closely related to like manic episodes usually, right? So too much chaos is you can kind of put it within like kind of a framework of like manic episodes and how, you don't really want those, right? It's a disorder. So what would be the opposite of that, right? Too much structure, too much order, right? To where even though you are still a flawed person, you have one kind of set direction that you're going to go in, and you are not going to change that, right? And the problem with that is that over time, things tend to deteriorate, right? So as you add more and more structure and you keep it there, keep a large amount of just structural order, you're not going to change anything. This is exactly how you're going to do everything. The more time that goes by, the more that process is going to deteriorate because you don't allow for that chaos and that flexibility to ensue to gradually just allow it to progress through the flow of time instead of just keeping it stagnant for it to eventually fall to the ground, right? And it's so interesting how that is so prevalent in our politics today. I mean, obviously, there are activist groups, right? And activist groups, while some of them are probably great and really have some truth and are really trying to fight for it. What I've noticed, though, is that there are a lot of extremist groups that claim to be activist groups. And the extremists are far more radical in the sense that they are not going to change over time. And they are only going to, as they continue, it might have had some positive impact in the beginning, but as it continues in keeping with that extreme and not allowing for all of this other information to allow for integration and harmonization within a society or an ethos of a society, the sensical kind of respected idea across the board, right, You're going to have these ideas that are going to pop up. And if they can't continue with the flow of what we would call common sense, right? Our ethos, what we abide by, that's going to fluctuate societally and on a personal level. And if our more political ideas don't do that, we're going to really end up what we have now, where everyone's really confused, right? I mean, personally, when it comes to politics, I'm fairly confused. Like, and I'm more so not even confused with the political aspect, but the people involved with the politics, right? And the people who are selling a package, right? And are buying the package of a certain political group, right? Here's the thing, going back to order, they are just buying a fully functional, ordered idea, and they are just going to roll with that. And if anything goes against anything within that package deal, then they're going to immediately shut it down and put it out, right? And as they continue through time, it's going to deteriorate and cause a lot of more problems than it should have, because it was supposed to change, at least grow, at least have some level of flexibility necessary for the details to, kind of figure themselves out. But no, they don't do that. So we end up with people who aren't really curious about policies, but more so morality. And when morality is too structured, you are not going to get the results that you want. I mean, if you look at the most successful religions or just kind of practices, there's usually a level of flexibility within the subjective experience of that religious idea. So you obviously have rules that you need to abide by, of course, but the most successful ones, you can see that there's that it allows for that flexibility that isn't related to cults. A lot of cults, there's too much order, right? And then, usually there's a scandal, and then the cult falls, or the big ones continue, And I would say probably the cults we don't hear about very often have core ideas and are very flexible, and able to fit in within the current societies so that they can continue to survive. The smart ones do add that level of flexibility so that they can survive, and keep their structure and their ethos of their cult or religion, or just philosophical idea or even political ideas alive. They're trying to keep it alive. In order to do that, what do? They keep that balance of structure, flexibility, of order and chaos, and they keep it working hand in hand. As the structure goes up, you have to allow for more flexibility, right? And I think that also has to do with, a human's innate want to be free, right? You want to be free and be able to make your own decisions while having something for you to fall back on, because personally, I think that was really the invention of morality. When it comes to implicit morality within objective reality, it's hard for me to say exactly what that would be, because there's that from a biological standpoint. There's that successful environmental integration, right? It's like, did I successfully do what I wanted to do? And if what you want to do is to have a relationship with someone, there is going to be that altruistic side to where you have to give to them and then have that receiving end, right? Obviously, we can't be completely altruistic, right? The altruism comes from our sense of self, right? Not our selfishness, of course, but who we are, the essence of our being. And we have to externalize that to people to then receive it, right? And there has to be that level of play, kind of like what Jordan Peterson talks about, how play is the most important, and we continue through that for our entire lives. I think he's spot on. Even if you don't agree with him with a lot of things, what he says there is spot on. That play that is necessary for that altruistic relationship between people. And all that to say is, when you pursue the most well-oriented, structured, and purposeful orientation towards the unknown, you have to have that balance with of structure and flexibility and order and chaos. And you have to be very careful, right? Because what did we say chaos was? Chaos was the new plane of existence, right? It's the unknown, it's the sporadic, what comes next. More so, what structure is, it is the prediction of what comes next based on the relevant information of what you've decided to be your framework of reference for what you want to fall back upon. And for a lot of people, that's either religion, morality. Ever since the Enlightenment, it's been a lot of science, of course. I think it should be a mix of both, of you probably morality, religion, and science and philosophy. I think balancing everything that you possibly could would be the best solution. Personally, that's what I think. But if you want to just have religion or just those things, that's fine for the most part, as long as you still have that level of exploration and pursuing the unknown, because there are so many things, there's so much information out there that you really have to sit back and be like, man, I'm not going to get all this. I just have to allow my innate curiosity to manifest. And that's how you it's how you kind of get that chaos. You have, ooh, what is that? What's that? And it's that what comes next, I don't really know, but I'm gonna figure it out, which is very great. But if you don't have something to rely upon, it's going to completely collapse. And I think that's also a problem that we have within Western society, is that we haven't created an ethos worthy of a whole civilization, right? We had religion to some degree, but then that kind of stopped. And all of a sudden we have a big melting pot of different cultures and ideas. And one thing, listen, it's been wonderful having all of these different rich cultural ideas for us to help in enriching our lives. But what's happening now is that there's a confusion when it comes to the ethos of our society. What is the sensible standard for everyone, And now with the invention of technology, right? It's not just for our civilization, but for other people's civilizations and how we interact and come to that degree of play necessary to interact with even people of other cultures, right, and other countries, because in our country we can kind of really talk about anything with anyone to some degree, and it usually be okay. I mean, there are I would say there's probably 20% of the population is unreasonable, but the 80% is, and you can have those genuine discussions more so than you think. You just have to not be prideful in it. It has to be genuine and thoughtful, and if they get offended, then okay, like, sorry, step back and then just continue with your life, But you don't want to wait for other people to catch up to the level of inquiry you're at. Like, just do it. And if people don't want to, then just still be their friend, engage with them with however you can. But anyways, I'm not here to teach you how to make friends, right? I'm not here to teach at all, actually. I'm just kind of raising what I've been thinking about, or raising up to what I've been thinking about, pointing towards it, I should say, pointing towards what I'm thinking about through this. And I think that as I've talked about it manifesting on a cultural and societal and systemic level, the need for a common, sensible, intelligible understanding of the base of what we should build upon, right? That is not, we haven't gotten to a standard of what that should be across the board. And I think that we probably won't get to that point. I mean, it's possible. It's totally possible. It's just, there would have to be a lot of things that would have to ensue for us to get to that level of harmony on a fundamental level, to allow for more complicated ideas to begin to grow, right? Because if there's not rich soil, then no one's going to be able to grow anything out of that. And it's all just going to be nonsensical garbage to most, because they have nothing to build upon it. They have no frame of reference, right? And what I'm really trying to emphasize here is that on a societal level, this is happening, and on an individual level, it is as well. Now, how do we combat that? Well, to combat the proclivity towards extremes, for example, we would need to rely upon something, on a baseline something that we 100% know works, at least at an axiomatic level, if not empirical, which would be wonderful. I mean, if you think about it this way, right? We're belief-centered creatures, and there are a lot of beliefs out there that are very simple, and are 100% true, that are just not very valuable in your life. You know, like, for example, being kind to people. That is so obvious. Of course we should be kind to people, but do we actually implement that in our lives? You know, is that really a priority? Is compassion a priority? Is self-worth a priority? You know, you have to make these things an actual priority, write them down and say, okay, I want to live by this. And you have to actually get to a level to where you want to, right? If you don't really want to or care enough to, then it's not going to do anything, and you're going to continue with kind of this level of chaos that's just continuing, and you don't have no direction because you've had no structure, right? So you can take these simple things if you want, like being kind to people, showing compassion, love, whatever that is, you know, and figuring those out, and then having that and other things as well, obviously, like genuinely expressing yourself, not saying things you don't want to, and don't put up with certain things, you know, like be a person who has rules, right? You want rules. That's why also religion is very useful, is because it gives you rules while allowing you to pursue what you want, right? So they have this set of rules that you live by. That is your, on a fundamental physiological level, those rules are what give you a satisfactory understanding that you will survive. It's like, okay, as long as I abide by these rules, there's that level of implicit, okay, I'm good, I'm surviving, okay, great. You don't want to go against those ideals, otherwise you're going to find yourself in this whole loop of like, what's happening, you know, especially if you get rid of a value without replacing the value, right? So if like, let's say, for example, you've said, I am not going to have a sexual relationship with somebody until marriage, right? For just an example. If you were to break that, that would have such detrimental mental, psychological damage, and would completely just, it would be a very radical spiral down towards depression if you were to go against something that you truly did care for. You know, even if it wasn't from a religious standpoint, just because you're like, you know what, I want to commit myself to only one person. And I'm going to do that, and by, you know, keeping myself, you know, not sexually active until I do have that one person to where I can fully commit myself to without giving my heart to other people. If you wanted to do that and you went against that on a random, just like, oh, I was feeling like really like I want to, and this girl was flirting with me and I just did it, that's going to have such detrimental physiological effects, you know, to where you have to either convince yourself that you didn't really care for it in the first place, which is just going to push all that pain into the unconscious, and it's just going to manifest throughout your life in many different ways, right? So we don't really want that. So there are these fundamental values that we have, and that is the structure needed. And the more flexible they are, the better, I would say, but also the more simple they are, the better. Because when we have simple structures, right, such as being kind to others, that in and of itself, you can write any books about. Just being kind. What is love, right? And those questions are genuinely good to ask. But having them as the structure, as the value, it's like, you know, for this to be symbolically true, whatever this overarching idea is, it will allow you to then pursue those more abstract ideas while feeling safe, because you do have a a level of structure and value for you then to pursue the more chaotic parts of life. And I think that's also what we're missing on a cultural and societal level, because we don't teach that in schools. There's nothing that gets to the essence of a human being from kindergarten to high school. There's just nothing there. Really, there's not. I mean, there could be maybe, as you get into literature a little more in English class, it's going to talk about different philosophical ideas within the literature and its implicit values, but there's no really emphasis on it. There's nothing that cultivates your fundamental values. It's something you have to do for yourself, and I wish that was taught in schools, that you should do that, but it's not. There's nothing really teaching the structure that's necessary for you to then pursue the more abstract, flexible things that you can still fall back upon, but still fall back upon the values if it's wrong, right? It's like, oh, this isn't how you do it, but that's fine because I still have this overarching term that is right. And there are often times where, if we have too many of those, we do have to change, right? There is that level of change necessary. And a lot of that change is going to be at the beginning. I mean, for me, what I told myself is that I was going to wake up every morning and I was going to tear apart my identity every morning and just get rid of it all and start from a place of just nothing, just a disillusion of everything. And this was completely sober, by the way. You can do this without doing drugs. You don't have to take psychedelics to grow. I promise you that. However helpful they might be, right? But if you have like PTSD, I would recommend doing psilocybin personally. But that is not medical advice. And do it with your trusted healthcare professional in a state that is legal. Anyways, yes, I'm going to. So I would tear down my identity every morning, right? Because I knew that the values that I had weren't good enough. I didn't value anything rich with meaning or had any depth. And it wasn't simple. It was all just mumbo jumbo that was incoherent. So I tore down myself and I discovered the simple aspects of how you should orient your life and what is known in philosophy and different moral practices and what works and what's simple, and how and pursuing that really does create such a wonderful experience. And that relationship between order and chaos is so beautiful when you figure out how to balance it. I mean, truly, balance is the key to understanding most things. It's quite insane when I come across ideas and I look at two polar opposites of an idea. And I'm like, okay, those are interesting. What would happen if we meet in the middle? And oftentimes, if not every time, it makes far much more sense and is far more logical and coherent and just makes sense when it's those extremes put together within an idea. And if you're able to do that, man, you're going to have such a good experience, because you're going to come across different ideas that are going to just directly oppose each other. And being able to look at those both sides empathetically and really consider what they have to say, meet in the middle, and then extract the truth from it. It's such a wonderful process. Anyway, that's just my last piece of advice for the video. Anyways, this has been very fun, and I hope to catch you in the next video. See you later.